Since the takeover of HISD, we have lost over 5,000 teachers. At the same time, the superintendent has sent over $40 million to his schools in Colorado. Vote no on the HISD bond, Prop A and B. It's time to return our democratically elected board. Since the takeover of HISD, we have lost over 5,000 teachers. At the same time, the superintendent has sent over $40 million to his schools in Colorado. Vote no on the HISD bond, Prop A and B. It's time to return our democratically elected board.
Folks, we're going to get started in just a minute here. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Matt Ewalt, Senior Director of Events and Live Journalism for the Texas Tribune. Welcome to those joining us in person here at Rice University and those joining us online for our conversation today titled Inside the Interim, a Conversation with Houston Lawmakers. Joining us today are State Representatives Charles Cunningham, Republican from Humboldt, Cristina Morales, Democrat for Houston, and Armando Wally, Democrat for Houston. Our moderator is Texas Tribune politics reporter James Barragan. Our program will run an hour today with 45 minutes for conversation and 15 minutes for your questions. Here in Houston, we have mic stand for our in-person audience right here. And our virtual audience can also submit questions online at our Q&A portal, texastribune.org/ask. That's texastribune.org/ask. We are grateful for the support of our sponsors today. Our major sponsors are Texas State Technical College, Houston Federations of Teachers, Methodist Healthcare Ministries, Beyond Petrochemicals, Every Texan, and Raise Your Hand Texas. Though corporate sponsors and donors underwrite this event, they play no role in determining the content, speakers, or line of questioning. We also want to thank our host, Rice University, and the Glasscock School of Continuing Studies here on campus. Here to offer a welcome is Rice University President Reginald DeRoche.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Rice University's campus. For those of you here for the first time, I hope you get a chance to visit our beautiful campus here. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Susan M. Glasscock School of Continuing Studies for today's important conversation hosted by the Texas Tribune. We are honored to have such a distinguished group of leaders joining us to discuss some of the critical issues that impact Houston as well as the broader Texas community. I'd like to extend a special welcome to our esteemed guests, Representative Charles Cunningham, Representative Cristina Morales, and Representatives Armando Wally. Thank you for being here to share your incredible insights. Your leadership is vital in shaping the future of Houston and our state, and we're grateful to have the Texas Tribune politics reporter James Barragan guiding today's conversation. The topics being discussed today, ranging from weather resilience in Texas and the coast to election management, are timely and critical for our state. As we look towards the future and the 89th legislative session, conversations like these help ensure that we understand that we are addressing the needs of all Texans, especially those right here in Houston, one of the most diverse and dynamic cities in the world. Today's important discussion comes just one day after the launch of Rice's new strategic plan, which we did yesterday morning in front of over 1,200 faculty and staff, and is called Momentous, Personalized Scale for Global Impact. And much of the plan is focused on how Rice can move forward our city, state, and country and world through premier teaching and research and partnerships with everyone here, as well as others in the state of Texas and around the country. At Rice, we are deeply committed to fostering discussions that bring together leaders, policymakers, and the community. This is where ideas meet action, and we believe that by working together, we can create solutions that benefit everyone. Thank you again to the Texas Tribune for hosting this wonderful event, and thank you to our panelists for sharing your time and expertise. We look forward to the outstanding discussion ahead. With that, I'll hand it back over to Matt to get us started. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President DeRoche. I want to thank all those around the state who make the journalism of the Tribune, including events like this one, possible by becoming Texas Tribune members. To learn more and to become a member, you can visit texastribune.org/support. I also just briefly want to mention an upcoming Texas Tribune event, actually our second biggest event of the year, other than TribFest. On November 13th and 14th in San Antonio, we will gather for a symposium, Small Towns, Big Possibilities, our Future of Rural Texas Symposium. We'll convene ranchers and farmers, elected officials, and civic leaders from every corner of Texas and across the country to talk about where rural Texas is today and where it can go next. You can learn more about this event at texastribune.org/events. And now let's get to know our panel. Representative Charles Cunningham was elected in 2022 to represent House District 127, which includes Humble, Huffman, Kingwood, and Atascocita. He's lived in the district for more than 30 years, focusing on issues such as flood mitigation and control, public education, and public safety. For the 88th legislative session, he was appointed to serve on 3 committees: public education, redistricting, and urban affairs. Representative Cristina Morales currently represents Houston's District 145 in the Texas House. During the 88th legislative session, she authored and voted for bills supporting public education, worked to expand access to ethnic studies across the state, and fought Republican attacks on immigrants, voting rights, and women's health care. She has served as the vice chair of the International Relations and Economic Development Committee and is currently the highest elected member of the Mexican American Legislative Caucus, serving as vice chair. And Representative Armando Wally, now in his 8th term in the Texas House of Representatives, grew up in the Aldine community and graduated from MacArthur High School. He serves on multiple committees, including the House Appropriations Committee, House Committee on Licensing and Administrative Procedures, Select Committee on Sustainable Property Tax Relief, Select Committee on Healthcare Reform, and the House Committee on House Administration. He also holds leaderships in several legislative caucuses, including the Mexican American Legislative Caucus and the Legislative Study Group. And our moderator, James Barragan, is a politics reporter for the Texas Tribune with a focus on accountability reporting. Prior to joining the Tribune, James worked as a State House reporter for the Dallas Morning News and had previous stints at the Austin American-Statesman and Los Angeles Times. Also want to mention he was recently selected as a Nieman Fellow at Harvard from 2023 to 2024. I thank our panel and our audience for gathering here at Rice University and around the state this afternoon. And with that, I turn the program over to James.
Thank you, Matt, for the introductions, and thank you to our panel once again, and thank you to all of you for joining us for this important conversation. We've got a limited amount of time, so I want to just jump right into the questions. School has just started for school children across Texas, and so I want to start off talking about public education. And when we talk about public education in this area, obviously one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest issue, is the state's takeover of Houston ISD. So I want to just pose it openly for you all. Obviously, we have Democrats and we have a Republican here who may have different perspectives on the takeover. There was a big fight about whether the state should take it over, but that has finally happened, and there has been some movement and some big decisions that have happened. So I want to start off with Representative Wally on that end, and we'll move this way. This way we can go through seniority, and then also because I think the question will be slightly different for Representative Cunningham just because of your experience as an ISD board trustee. Representative Wally, I just want to ask sort of how do you think the takeover is going? Positives, negatives? Let's just start off there.
Well, first of all, thank you. I want to thank the Texas Tribune for having us and hosting us here at this beautiful campus here at Rice University. President DeRoche, thank you for that introduction and for your leadership here at Rice. What a wonderful institution to be at and to sit, particularly from my particular background. It's very humbling to be here. Why I mention my humble background is I grew up not too far from Houston ISD. Sam Houston High School, so I represent Aldine Independent School District. It's probably a majority of my district, but about a third of my district is in HISD's purview. So Sam Houston High School is the high school that is zoned to my area. And frankly, I think as somebody who voted against the school takeover bill, I think it was HB 1842. It was one of those bills that came through the pipeline. I've actually tried to kill some of those bills on points of order. Was successful, but not successful this time. There was a big push to send a message to schools, school districts like Houston Independent School District to take them over. The problem with that bill is that, and I'm against it, so just let me say that. I was against it. I voted against it, and my record reflects that. What's transpired since the takeover is thousands of teachers have left. The morale of the teachers, the personnel, the staff, they feel intimidated. I was at one of our teachers groups a couple weeks ago. Just the anxiety, the fear of retaliation is palpable. And why that matters is you got to have a good teacher in each classroom. And if your teacher is one, not certified, because we also heard, actually, we met with HISD, Representative Morales and I, and a couple of, Ana Hernandez, and I think Marian Perez and Ann Johnson met with Houston ISD to express our concerns about the communication, just the communication between the school district and their elected leaders. I think that's also a concern. For us, it's just been very, very concerning, the whole rollout of the takeover. We collectively, most of us are against that takeover, because why it's important statewide is because this bill had statewide impact. So any school district, it didn't have to be HISD. It could be Aldine, it could be Humble, it could be Spring. Any of those schools with one failing school, one is subject to a trigger of this bill. And that's the problem, is these state takeovers pose a huge problem for the educational needs of these children. And at the end of the day, it's always about the children. It's always about the education of these children. Instead of funding them at the level we need to fund at the state level, what we're doing is starving school districts. And that's what you're seeing all across this state. In rural communities and urban communities, these school districts are having budget deficits. That's what we should be doing, but instead, we're going on this route on school takeovers. And for me, HISD cannot continue to be a guinea pig for the rest of the state.
Thank you, Representative Wally. I want to go to Representative Morales next, but I also want to note that the Houston Landing has done some great reporting on this. There are also increases for teacher pay as part of the Houston ISD takeover. There are improvements in test scores for some of those students, and so I think there is like a tricky balance here to walk. But I really want to have like a thorough conversation. I understand the concerns there, but I do want to sort of present also some of the other side that, again, like I said, Houston Landing has done some great reporting. But Representative Morales, I'll hand it over to you and see what you think are the positives and negatives.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me today. I, too, I'm a product of HISD, and I will tell you that at my high school, Austin High School, shortly after I left, there was a walkout because the school books that we had were over 20 years old. There was no investment in our schools. And when I first ran for office and talking to people at the door, they were disappointed with HISD under democratically led leadership. So there were concerns, and we know that. And it takes generational change, and it's about us getting folks out to vote and making sure that people understand that we elect these people who run our schools. So some people in my community were actually welcoming a state takeover. They thought, well, maybe this is the change that we need, right? But it has not worked out. And those same people have made it a point to come back and tell me, you were right. This is terrible for our schools. There is no accountability whatsoever. None of the people running our schools have run for office, have asked for our vote, and we cannot hold them accountable. It is terrible. And it's an overreach. It's an overreach by those that lead our state right now. So just want to start out by saying that. I understand that there are maybe some teachers that are getting paid more, but overall, every person that I talk to that has some kind of connection with HISD is incredibly disappointed. The morale is very low. In one school in my district, just to give you an example, 40 teachers, out of 40 teachers, only 6 returned for this year, this school year. So you've got all new teachers, a new principal, parents are very upset. And this was at the beginning of August when I was told this. There probably are less after the school year started, I can assure you of that. People are hiding, their teachers are trying to reach out in silence because they're afraid of some kind of retaliation. And students are unhappy with some of the policies that have been imposed. And how can we have libraries that are not accessible to students? How can we do that? That is outrageous to me, and very, very upset about it. So I just do everything in my power to remind people to vote. I've sent all kinds of letters. I'm worried about the safety of our children. When a student in one of the schools in my district died, and we still don't know what happened. There's questions surrounding that death. And so I will continue to fight. So saying that, that the scores have increased and that there are teachers getting paid better, that hasn't helped. And I don't believe the scores, because I brought some legislators together to have a discussion, and someone said there is a way to manipulate those scores. So there's a belief that those are done. But I'm excited to see my future colleague, Representative Simmons, here, and I know she's been very, very outspoken when it comes to HISD, and thank you, and I look forward to fighting with you this next session.
Thank you, Representative Morales. And I do want to point out, in those same stories, Houston Landing has pointed out that out of the 11,000 teachers in Houston ISD, about a quarter of them quit, which is much higher than their 15 to 20% usual turnover rate. So the burnout is high, as you're pointing out. I want to hand it over to Representative Cunningham for your perspective on this, particularly with your background in education and with school districts.
Thank you. And let me thank the Tribune also for hosting this, and thank you and the audience for being in attendance. I'm going to just back it up a little bit. I know Houston ISD very well, and I say that because I work for a company called CenterPoint Energy, and in that position, I was the education guy. So I handled all ISDs. I handled all universities. As I shared with Rice University, we helped build a BRC. And so I've worked with education. In addition to that, I was a volunteer in my school district, in my home, Humble ISD. 12 years as a volunteer on steering committees, whatever committee I could be on, and then 12 years as a board member as I continued to work in that area. Also, in addition to that, my wife was a school teacher, and she was a school teacher in Houston ISD. Close to 30 years. We both retired at the same time. She taught at Scarborough High School. And so I knew all the folks that was there, from Terry Greer on down, and we worked on all kind of bond projects. Now, I know Mr. Wally mentioned that bill, 1842, I believe you said it was. My predecessor was there when that bill was passed. But I will say that at least from my knowledge and history of it, it was over 120 House reps that voted for it. Now, we all know bills have unintended consequences. This would probably be listed as an unintended consequence when you have, and I forget what the number is, 380, almost 400 schools in HISD. And because of that, one school is going to cause a takeover. I'll also say that prior to the takeover, the superintendent that was here, Dr. Gratham, had already pulled some of these schools that were on the fail list, pulled them out. But now, the takeover is a takeover. And of course, you're going to have turnover. And my role as a school board member, that was one of the things we looked at in our school district. What does the turnover look like? And then particularly if it was at a certain school, what does the turnover look like? And then what is going on there? There's got to be something going on there. Now, my school district now has probably received a lot of HISD teachers. My wife knows some of them. They're in Humble ISD now. But we're here now at a point, and I, as a public ed committee member, toured some of the schools. Now, I don't know if they were orchestrated or not, but what I saw it was going to be something that was going to work and it was going to look good. And so as a state rep on the pub ed committee, I'm supporting the direction that we're going in. Because once again, it is not about you, me, not about any of us. It's about the next generation. It's about the future. It's about our kids. That's what this is all about. And we have to do right. Because just because of one school, not did they just fail once, twice, 3 times, 7 years in a row. And that's a generation that's ruined. And we're just talking about that one school. But why does everybody else have to pay for it? That's been the question. And why was not HISD doing its job back then so that we wouldn't have to be in the position that we are in today? That's the question. But we're going to move forward. I'm going to continue to focus in on education, and I know we're going to talk about a lot more of education. As I said, I did schoolwork for 24 years, and of course, me and my wife, we don't always agree because she's a school teacher, and she's always right. But I'll stop right there.
Smart man. I do want to just sort of nail down here, Representative Cunningham, because you said you weren't there for the vote on HB 1842, if that is the right bill. I also can't. It was
Probably 2015, somewhere around there.
yeah, because then there was a whole legal fight. But so it was well before your time. But are you generally supportive of this type of bill where the state can take over, or what do you think should be the role of the state in trying to improve local districts? Because I think everybody, as you point out, is interested in the children and the school children. I think Representative Wally and Representative Morales would also say that. But what is the role? What is the balance there?
You know, I'm going to be in support of it because I think all parents want their kids to succeed. And so if you have low-performing schools, then you're going to have low students. You're going to have students that aren't equipped or ready to go into the world. You're going to have students that aren't ready to meet at least college level. That's why we'll talk about higher ed. That's why we have all these remedial classes going on. And so, yes, I would still support it. However, because I think parents want accountability. They want to know exactly, is my child being educated? And so, I'll add that to that. That's where I'm at on that.
Okay, thank you. I want to throw it back to Representative Morales because we're talking about, Representative Cunningham just talked about parents want accountability. You said there isn't accountability, and I want to sort of burrow down on that. What do you mean by that? Because, I mean, I understand it's a big nuanced issue, right? There is a lot of burnout from teachers. The students do seem to, I mean, it's hard on them to learn all these new lesson plans. It's hard on them to try to figure out the new way that teachers are running the classes. They miss their old teachers who they were really attached to. Again, I point out that there have been some improvements with the test scores. There's some teachers that are making more than $10,000 more than they previously were. I think it's near $80,000, where the average is $60,000 for teachers. There is considerable improvement there, but I want to burrow down on sort of what do you think should be the direction, and where do you think the lack of accountability is?
Well, that's a good question. Got to think about it for a second, but.
Do you want to start off with the lack of accountability that you talked about?
Yes, so the lack of accountability. There are many questions that are posed at the board meetings that are not answered. They go unanswered. There are many times that the community wants to give input and they are not allowed to do so. We've had more folks show up for board meetings than ever before. We have people coming to us as state representatives, or to me personally, I'm sure to you also, and they are complaining about the state of our schools right now. We know that there has been some frivolous spending by the current superintendent, Mike Miles, and it's been in the Houston Chronicle, and folks come to us and say, we saw that there was spending on these items when it could have gone to invest in other things. Again, safety of our schools. And then just here recently, The HIS police members have reached out to say there's problems there as well, and there's going to be folks leaving the police department of HISD. So I don't trust anything right now, and I don't trust the superintendent. I've spoken to him personally, and I've seen him go back on his word, so there's no trust there. The appointed members of the board are not accountable. I reach out to them, I text them, I have a couple of their phone numbers, not all of them. And when I reach out, I really don't get a good answer. You know, a kid died in one of my schools. We still don't know what happened. And I think that's cause for alarm.
I think that's the point you're trying to make, right? That because they're appointed by the state, because the superintendent is appointed by the state, there is no election where you can go to and say, hey, let's turn these people over, which would be the natural way that the public would make their voice heard about
Absolutely
dissatisfaction.
correct. These
Okay.
people did not run for office. Mike Miles was put there by the TEA and Governor Abbott. So there was nobody who was elected to office that picked this person. And there's just no accountability. We cannot unelect these people, elect somebody else right now. And our elected leaders are literally just sitting on the sidelines and don't have any kind of decision-making right now.
Thank you, Representative Morales. Representative Wally, you're the elder statesman here on the panel. So I want to throw it to you with a more difficult question, because as Representative Cunningham talked about, if there is a school that is failing year after year to meet the state standards, Houston ISD had the opportunity. They were in charge, and there was no improvement. So what is the solution supposed to be? Or what do you see as the path going forward now that we are in this situation? There clearly is a lot of dissatisfaction, but as you all know, the state is going to do what the state is going to do. And so what would you see as the solution going forward here?
Well, I think any school that's been rated unacceptable is for any school district that just can't happen. Not in this day and age. But if we just step back a little bit though, the state of Texas over the last 30 years has reduced its state funding to ISDs. Okay. So in the 80s and probably around the 90s, it was probably a 70-30 split, where 70%, a little less, of our school financing in the state of Texas was paid by the state of Texas. And then it was supplemented, not supplanted, supplemented by your local property taxes and your ISDs, okay? Over time, what's happened is, this is not just for HISD, because you have failing schools all across the state. What you've had also now is that proportionate share of state funding has been reduced on a decline over the last 30 years. So the lion's share of your local property taxes are paying for finance in your local public schools, right? So it's put a lot of strain on your local ISDs, okay? And so I think that structurally is a problem, because now you're forcing ISD to make some hard decisions, right? Majority of their budgets are personnel, our staff, the teachers, the paraprofessionals, their pension, their benefits. That's the majority of these state budget or these local ISD budgets. So when you strain over years as a proportion of the inflation and population growth, state funding has not kept up, right? So you have that structural problem with how we fund public schools in the state of Texas, and it's flawed, right? So we'll start with that. So when you go over to the accountability part, well, the funding really matters, right? Because it's really hard to educate a young brown and black kid in the state of Texas, providing the socioeconomic status of those children. I was one of those. I grew up with my grandparents and a single mother whose dad went to prison when I was in 8th grade, okay? And it's just harder to educate kids that look like us on this stage, right? And it's very difficult. At the same time, And these teachers need all the help they can get, right? Because you're putting so much on these teachers to be a nurse, to be a mental health professional, to be their social worker, to find them some shoes because kids don't have shoes, to find them some lunch money because their mama couldn't fill out the school and free reduced lunch application, right? So you compound all these issues, and then you're tasking the teacher with reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? So structurally, I think we have a problem. And the accountability part of it takes money, takes dollars to educate kids that look like us. So what I'm saying also is we cannot have failing schools. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable that any school in this state, which we're about to have another let me remind the last session, we had about a 20 to 30 billion, well, actually we had a $30 billion budget surplus. This session just got preliminary numbers on the budget surplus. We're probably going to have another 29, 30, $32 billion budget surplus going into this next biennium, this next 2 years. We have to adequately fund these schools, right? Because the dollars matter to educating kids that look like us, right? So accountability matters. Accountability matters. And HISD, I'm going to praise them when they do well, but I'm going to also, call them out when they don't. And HISD should not have allowed Wheatley High School, should not allow Wheatley High School to fail that long. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable for those children, particularly, but for those mamas and those daddies and those aunties and uncles that in that community of Fifth Ward, it's unacceptable that we would allow that. Now, to answer the question, there is a way to hold school districts accountable. But what we did in passing this bill is we went overboard. I think we went overboard. There's a way to kind of send a message to an ISD, right? Because HISD is not the only school that has failing schools, okay? I mean, I'm not going to call any other school district out, but you look at the ratings, right? And the rating system, too, is flawed, right? Because what you're doing also is you're setting up some schools and school districts to maybe play with the numbers, right? But the rating system also, the A through F rating system also, I voted against that as well. So the rating system, I think, is flawed, right? And I think there is a way. There are tools in the toolbox under existing state law in the education code. We didn't have to pass this really draconian bill to really target ISDs, right? Because now we're using, unfortunately, HISD is like in the crosshairs of state leadership, and we can't undo it, right? We don't. Well, some of us don't control the legislature, so if I had a magic wand, obviously we would pass a bill to
Does someone control the entire legislature up here? I don't know.
So-
But
I
I
wanted to
appreciate
add
the point,
something.
and sorry, Representative
Yeah.
Miles, but I appreciate the point also that a lot of these struggling schools are in Black and brown communities, are in low-income communities, because I think that is an important point, and that, to your point about school funding, I mean, I'm talking about this more than $10,000 raises for teachers, but perhaps if the funding would have been there before that, those payments could have, or that teacher pay could have increased beforehand.
These teachers don't, I mean, look, they don't go into teaching because they want to be rich, right? But you do got to respect their work. And they're with those, look, I have I shouldn't say we, my wife and I, we have a 14-year-old and 10-year-old. And we are hyper-involved parents. We're worse than helicopter parents. I'm sorry for my two kids. But we're hyper-involved in their education, right? We follow everything. We text with our teachers, with all their teachers. We try to be good parents and good role models for them on that front. But these teachers are under a lot of stress. You got to pay them what they deserve. We got to pay them what they deserve because we got money in the bank to do it. We have money in the bank to do it right now.
Okay, we got to move on because time is short and we've got other issues. I want to get on to a much easier issue, so let's talk about school choice and vouchers. We'll start with Representative Cunningham. Do you think, it looks like the legislature, at least in the House, is going to look very, very different from what it looked like last session? We had a lot of your fellow Republican colleagues who opposed vouchers and school choice who were knocked out in the primary. The governor who is pushing the school choice and vouchers bill, his bill, is confident that legislation will get passed on that issue. How do you supported his vision in the last session and the special session? Do you think there will be school choice voucher legislation next session?
Yes, there will be school choice voucher
And what would that look like?
legislation. We don't know what it looks like. The reason you don't know what it looks like is because now that the governor has the votes that he needs, it could be, we don't know what it looks like. The bill that was brought forth, HB1, that I did support, and I'll just pick on my district, which has part of your district in it also, too. I have 5 school districts in District House District 127. That bill would have bought $150 million new dollars to education. 45, almost 50 million to Aldine ISD, 45 to Humble ISD, 27 to Spring ISD, along with some other things too. Some safeguards. If you lose population, the state makes you whole. I mean, it was an all-encompassing bill. And as I try to tell everybody, I'm not just an ISD guy. When I look at my district has not only ISDs in it, it has homeschoolers, it has charter schools. And so those kids, they have parents, those parents pay taxes too. So I looked at it from an education standpoint, just not from an ISD. But speaking from an ISD, that was $150 million new dollars to education. Now, the governor has showed everybody now that politics is about votes. And he went and got the votes that he needed. During the interim, we met in August, and we talked about school choice. We talked about curriculum. We just turned in our report. I've turned my report in.
Who's we?
And I say we, the House Public Education. We met during August 12th, 13th. And so anyway, my report has been turned in on my recommendations. And as we move forward, I would like to see a program. There are so-called 38 programs within the United States, but there's only 8. And there is a program in North Carolina, which nobody's looking at. Everybody wants to look at Florida and Arizona. They encompass ISDs in their ESAs. And I think that would be a good choice if we could do that, because then we could marry that along with our 2-year colleges and work with our ISDs to help on workforce development and education. I've looked at this, I've studied it, but anyway, we'll see where that goes. I say that to say this because in January, we're being told that it's going to be an emergency session. After November 5th, after he gets the last tally on what his number is, there'll be an emergency session to have a vote on ESAs. So that'll be the first thing we do in January.
All right, so clear your schedules, everybody.
Yeah. So with that said, so then moving forward,
ready.
then I think what it does, it helps us, as Representative Wally mentioned, there's going to be at least, I was told, $29 billion surplus. How much of that can we get out of HB1 put into the bill to fund education? That's going to be that key right there. And I'll just stop and say this. My wife, as I said, was a public school teacher, and she stayed a public school teacher. She didn't move to administration or anything like that. She taught for 30-some years. She barely made maybe $80,000 when you add all the little stipends and stuff like that. So she wasn't there for the money. It was there for the kids. And we need to do a better job in making sure that we fund the teachers in the classroom. Before they can even start teaching, they have to have a bachelor's degree, maybe a master's, and then do teacher certification. And then you look at the rest of most of the ISD employees, and some, work their way up, with no education, they're making 6 figures. we need to pay our teachers better. And so as we look forward to this bill, and I don't know what it's going to look like, I don't even know if I'll be on Pub Ed next session, but my hope is to make sure that we properly fund education as best as we can.
Thank you, Representative Cunningham. I want to throw the question to either Representative Morales or Representative Wally. It seems like they need a quorum to meet for a special session. I don't know if you guys would show up to that, but that's one thing to keep in mind. And then two is with vouchers, I mean, you hear what Representative Cunningham is saying, what the governor is saying. The governor certainly believes he has the votes. How do you feel about it? Do you think that they have the votes? And if so, is there any voucher school choice plan that would be acceptable to y'all?
Let me just interrupt before you answer that. There won't be no special session. This will be during the regular session that he'll call an emergency item. So I just want to clear that.
Got it.
Well, we know a thing or two.
Thank you for clarifying, because I needed to check my calendar there.
Well, we know a thing or two about breaking quorum, but on this side. But I am just opposed to vouchers. I believe it's a scam, and let's call it vouchers. Let's call it what it is. That is going to be the #1 fight for Democrats going into the session, and those who prioritize public education, because it was a bipartisan effort to kill voucher bills. There is no way our state can fund two school systems. There's no way. It's impossible. We don't have that kind of money.
Seems like they can barely fund one.
Exactly. We are nationally, we are so underfunded. It would take billions of dollars just to meet the national average. Yet, we're one of the wealthiest states in the nation. Please leave here today or listen today knowing that our schools are so underfunded, our teachers are so underpaid, and a voucher scam, I apologize, but I'm going to call it what it is, the way I see it, a voucher scam would only help those people who are already sending their children to private schools. And when you think about our public schools and that the majority of the students in those schools are Black and brown, it feels as though it's an attack on our community. And I say that as a Latina. So we are against it, and we will continue to talk strategy as we try to kill it. But guess what? We could flip the House, and we could not pass it at all. So please, everyone, help us flip the House.
I think Representative Wally wanted to get in a word.
Yeah, just
real
a couple.
quick, because we're running low on time.
I know your time is limited, but just a couple clarifications. So in HB 1, the House Appropriations Bill, there was a $5 billion, we parked $500 billion in the budget.
Say that number again.
I'm not 500 billion.
Okay.
5 billion, sorry. It's a $230 billion budget. There was going to be about another 4.5 billion that was going to go towards public education. 500 million of that was for this, what they call education savings accounts, also known as vouchers. And the governor held, they were contingencies. They were contingency riders in the budget that if that was connected to the ESA voucher bill. Well, obviously, the vouchers bill itself died on a bipartisan way. So mostly urban Democrats and rural Republicans, because they also know that their ISDs are very, very important to them, politically, and I'm talking about politically here, there was a coalition to kill vouchers, if you will. What the politics are such now that Governor Abbott did succeed. He was successful in going after some of the Republicans that voted with us in a bipartisan way to kill vouchers. The interesting thing about all those races that he won and was successful in is that they didn't, and the candidates that he recruited these were candidates that did not, that he won not on vouchers. They really lied and misled the voting public. In many of these rural Republicans were beat on a border security vote. And actually, all those he attacked those rural Republicans on border security, which we know that no Republican voted against any of the border security measures. And so I think the politics are that's a just 2 points of clarification. The other point, lastly, quickly, is I think it's premature to say that vouchers would pass next session favorably or not. Yeah, he was successful. You got it. Those are the facts. He was successful. But I think once these folks that were recruited, once they have to go back home and defend that vote, I think it's a very hard vote for a rural member to have to defend back home. I mean, that's just me personally on the politics, so I'll just end it there.
Thank you. I think Representative Cunningham, you want to get in a word?
No, not really, but I think...
Oh, okay, that's okay. We got other issues to move on to.
But I'll say right quick, I mean, this is what I said. It's not a guarantee. After November 5th, if the governor does his count, he'll see what he has. And if he has that number, because all he needs is, what, 76. That's all he needs. And he'll probably have at least maybe 80 that he knows. Now, that 85 that we already have, 86 Republicans, he's probably got 80, but if he has 76, that's all he needs after November 5th.
Yeah, I think we got to wait till the first week of November, maybe the first Wednesday, but who knows
But
if these are...
also the speaker's race could play into this.
Who knows if
and
the speaker's race could play into
yes,
this,
and
yeah.
the Democrats could have the power to make sure that whoever the next speaker is against vouchers.
And she's true, too. I wasn't going to talk about the speaker's race. I'm still trying to get my head around that, but you're correct.
Right. Well, I do want to talk also about elections because we are trying to keep it to local issues. I've got 2 issues to go to, and we might only get to 1 before questions. Elections. Obviously, there's been challenges with the elections administrations here in Harris County. I want to ask Representative Wally first, sort of, what is the state of Harris County elections right now? Are we feeling good about them? Are we feeling a little bit concerned? There's obviously been issues. The state will be monitoring Harris County. And so should people be confident that they will be able to cast their ballots in November without any issues?
Well, I mean, our clerk, Ms. Husband, she's a professional. The folks that I talk to at the county are professionals. You haven't had any issues other than the politics that they wanted to take away the election administration component and they split it a couple years back, and they wanted to put it back with the clerk's office. And so Ms. Husband's done an admirable job. I mean, it is a big county. You got 5 million people here. You got over 2 million folks that are registered to vote. So it's a large task. I mean, we're larger than 25 states. So I think we just need to put that into context. But to me, what if we're talking about elections, I think we need to recognize that at the federal level, I think what we fear is a rehashing of old, tired tropes about how this election was run in previous administrations, right? So what I would say is the transfer of power is very important, and the fair transfer power at the federal level is extremely important. So I would, that's my only fear, is that this demonization of large urban counties. And so some of us are asking the DOJ to put some monitors, right? Because we don't need folks intimidating everybody's right to access the franchise. That is foundational. And so that would be my only concern, would be powers that be in other communities that want to come down and, because they've threatened that type of behavior of coming to communities of color and trying to intimidate people, their ability to access the franchise.
Thank you, Representative Wally. I think another great point that you make is that Harris County bigger than some states in the country, and so the administration of that is difficult, and people who don't know a whole lot about elections will use that to attack. There have been some issues, though, and so I want to pose it to Representative Cunningham. Sort of what is the state's role in overseeing elections, because there will be monitors here? I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, before I was an elected rep, I was also a precinct chair for close to 15 years, so I was there running elections side by side. Now, I will say this, I welcome because, you know, there are some concerns. And I myself had a concern because for 7 years, I had to fill out an affidavit because just so happens my son's name is Charles Cunningham too. But I'm junior. And we finally got it right 2 years ago because what's the problem? Well, you don't have a dot by the name Junior. And I had to keep filling out affidavits. That's what they said. So I look forward to it, but I think everybody should rest assured. I mean, if you're there, and I think as my colleague said, it's all about voting. It's all about turning out. You know, it's your right, and you shouldn't just sit at home. Make your vote count.
Thank you. I think we're going to start taking questions. Matt Ewalt is standing over there by the microphone. If y'all can.
We're going to take, well, we have time for about 3 questions here, so I'm not trying to get people to race up here, but I see 1, 2, and 3 right here. So we'll make sure all 3 of you have some time.
We got a question up here, Matt.
Okay. Well, why don't, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. I am a Houston ISD parent, so I was very interested in what I would hear from y'all today. One of the highlights y'all talked about was students and their experience and what this has been like for them. As a parent, what I have seen is children coming home in tears. I have seen students walk out of their schools. They organized an entire walkout on their own in the spring to protest what was happening in their campuses. High-achieving schools are losing half of their teachers. Bel Air High School lost 80 teachers. My child doesn't have a teacher to write her a college recommendation right now because all her teachers left Houston ISD. So when we throw around talking about the children, I just want to make sure we understand what the experience is for kids in the building. They walk in, their days are timed to the second. And if they have a question, that's too bad, you gotta wait till later. Maybe they'll remember, maybe they won't. They don't have time for the Pledge of Allegiance in class in a lot of these schools. Instruction starts at 8. You better be ready for it at that moment. And so my question is this unintended consequence as it was couched? This feels bigger than an unintended consequence. This feels intended as a parent. And it feels, I just can't be happier my kid is graduating.
Thank you for the question. Do you want to direct it to any particular representative?
Whoever wants to take it.
Well, I just want to say that it is intentional, and it's very, very sad. And we talked about Wheatley High School earlier. I never will forget. I wasn't there to vote, and I'm so proud of my colleague here who voted against the state taking over our schools because of a failing school. I think he saw that there were going to be bigger consequences than what was thought of at that time, because many Democrats supported it because we don't want failing schools. But Wheatley High School, the school that was in question, was actually doing better under Superintendent Granita Latham. You brought her up earlier. It was actually doing better. There was effort to make sure that these schools were improving. So at the moment that our school districts were taking over, we were actually doing a better job. So it was intentional. They could have said, you know, the school is doing better, we're not going to take over. And it's an overreach. And I'm just incredibly sad to hear that that your child is having such a terrible time in HISD. I actually went to a school. I actually saw the NES program and how it works, and I was appalled. I don't know if you read my op-ed, but the timers, I'm looking at a timer here and it bothers me. I saw no interaction between the students themselves. So how do you make friends in school when you can't even talk to the person sitting next to you? And there was no interaction between the teacher and the students. It was simply, answer this question, you have 4 minutes. Answer this question, you have 4 minutes. And if you answered it right, you left to another room. And if you didn't, you stayed in the room. There was some just weird things that I'd never seen in a school. And it's very sad. And when I asked Mike Miles, where is the data that proves that this is working and the scores are improving? And he said, it's right here.
Thank you for the question. We've got another question.
So we have an opportunity for 3 questions here, and I just want to make sure we can get to all of them here.
Hello, my name is Agochi Menaha. I am an educator, lifelong educator and parent. My question is that there's politics and there's practice. And a lot of the decisions that we're talking about in this room are politics, but there are practices that directly impact our students that could be changed expeditiously. Specifically, removing and taking away libraries should not be on the table. So in what way, if we don't have the ability to vote in and out these people who are making these decisions, how can we make such a small change that's going to have huge impact on what students, black, brown, white, rich, or poor, see when they walk in, and a library, which represents information and access to knowledge, is no longer there?
Just real quick, I mean, I would stay involved in your school. So, like, I think this morning I got an invite to Hinojosa early pre-K. They're having career day, but they're having folks come in and read to the children. So I'm in my schools all the time. I go read to them all the time. I would encourage you to do that. Like, so there is agency. We do as a community. Yes, this is draconian, but we have kids there now that need help. Like, just because this has happened and this takeover has happened doesn't stop anybody in this room from going and volunteering at a particular school in your neighborhood, right? It's those partnerships with the community, with the parents, that will lift, and it was lifting Whately. It was lifting other schools. We were Sam Houston. They were going to close Sam Houston High School about 10, 15 years ago. The parents, little Hispanic moms were, not little kids with their moms in strollers protested HISD. They organized within themselves, their PTA, and prevented the scale shutdown of Sam Houston High School. It was those parents. I was out there helping them organize, but it was those parents that were out there raising a little good trouble, as the legendary John Lewis said, right? So there is agency. We do partnerships. Right now we have a partnership enrichment programs with, right now we're gonna sign an MOU with Aldine Independent School District, Lone Star College, U of H downtown, to do an MOU to do seamless matriculation of children at one particular high school at Rose Avalos P-Tech High School. Those kids will be able to graduate with a certificate from Lone Star College and their high school diploma, but also now transition those kids to have a seamless matriculation into U of H downtown in the IT cybersecurity world, right? And so that is being worked on now. You have MD Anderson up there, Mr. Moreno's up there behind you. They do good work in a lot of our schools, right? You have people in this room that are helping. You have AT&T that's giving out laptops with CompuDoc. So there are people that want to do well, and I just would encourage you to stay involved in your school, regardless of what's been happening here. Sorry, I know that was a long
Thank
question.
you. We've got about under 5 minutes for these next two questions.
Jacob Clementich, please excuse my speech disability due to a brain damage that I had back in 1982. Before brain damage, I went to private parochial schools. After brain damage, just high school, I went to a public high school. My best teacher by far was my public high school mathematics teacher named Miss Ruth Morgan. She was the best. She said that I needed to redeem myself in fractions, and so I did, and then I got onto courses in pre-college algebra. At any rate, what I want to say is the vouchers are not a scam. They are good because I'm like Hayes Middleton. I believe in school choice. And I think, Armando, you are full of it because, you should not use black, brown as a question. What about the, quote, yellow people, the people from
Thank you for the comment.
China
Is there a
War?
question?
Yes, the question is, what do y'all believe? Do you believe that the takeover of HISD was a leverage for school choice?
I have no comment. I don't
Okay.
have a response to that.
I think we're ready to move on from that. Gentleman with the last question. Thank you.
So Danny Norris, a former trustee for the Harris County Department of Education, and actually a plaintiff, a current plaintiff on the voting bill. When you guys left town, I filed suit. So, but my question is about ISD, and I had to resign from my seat because I ran against one of you guys' colleagues. about the specific issue. And one of the issues I made mention to him was that the zip code that feeds Wheatley High School and Cashmere High School, which were both cited in the takeover, has the lowest life expectancy in the county, second lowest income in the county. So it is clearly an economic issue that is tied to it. Now, granted, in the ISDs, and being at the very top of an ISD, being at the very top of the education food chain, there's only so much you can do in the classroom. So the one thing I did see when the threat of the takeover happened was that when there was a gun held to HISD head, they did pour money into those schools. So one of my suggestions was, and I guess the question to the panel is it possible to, instead of a takeover, to have it as a fine? And every school district will be different because who knows what the school district's budget is. Every school district's budget is different. But if you find a school district, I'm going to give $100, but it only costs $10 to fix the problem, that would incentivize the school districts to put that $10 into the school and actually fix the problem, as opposed to just allowing them to continue to fail year after year. Because I think that was the ultimate point was you shouldn't let school districts fail, and I agree. But the question is, how do we make sure that we actually are pouring the resources to the school without the takeover? And I'll leave that to the panel to address.
I mean, that's a good, honestly, that's probably a good suggestion. We could look at that, but I think the politics are such that any bill that would reverse a school takeover is unlikely. That's just my personal view, even though I know we're going to have some efforts to file bills, and I would support it. But the politics are such that I don't know that we would get to that point. But I think the suggestion is well taken, honestly, so that instead of a draconian takeover, that there has to be some accountability. There has to be some accountability. You just can't allow a school like Wheatley and Cashmere and the other schools that trigger this. And I don't want, we should uplift those schools because they get so much negative publicity. We should uplift Cashmere. We should lift up Wheatley, Booker T. Washington, Sam Houston High School, Barbara Joy High School. We should stop demonizing those schools. We need to uplift, and we all need to come together to help those schools get back on track.
Yes, I just wanted to add that another disappointing thing that has happened in HISD is the removal of the wraparound specialists, who are just amazing in those type of situations when there's socioeconomic problems within the community. And it's very devastating to many families that those are removed, and now they're in these sunrise centers that are not as accessible. But overall in Texas, we don't fund our schools properly. That's the biggest problem. We're a wealthy state, and we must do more. And sadly, it has become a political issue. I'm very disappointed about that. And that's why I ran for office, because I saw the problems in my own high school. And I wanted to make things better. And we did. In 2019, we passed HB 3, and we did some good things, but we haven't kept going. And we're holding your tax dollars. That surplus is your tax dollars that we're just holding hostage there when they could be doing good things in our schools.
Thank you, Representative Morales, and I want to thank the entire panel. Help give them a round of applause to thank them for a good conversation. Thank you.